Hi there, we're here at NASP 2020. I'm Dr. Brian Syzdek, Product Manager at Stoelting Psychology, and I've got the pleasure of talking with Dr. Jay Lucker, audiologist, author, and clinician, and Dr. Loraine Alderman, school psychologist, author, clinician. We're here to talk a little bit today about auditory processing disorder, what it is, how to treat it, and talk a little bit about some tools that can be useful, including some new books that are available from Stoelting. The new book is Survive and Thrive with Auditory Processing Disorder and Learning Disabilities, Strategies for Teens, Parents, and Teachers. We'll be talking about this, so welcome everyone, thanks for coming. Why don't we start with, maybe a lot of people don't know what is APD, so what is it? What is auditory processing disorder?
As the name says, auditory, so it has something to do with hearing, but it's not hearing loss. It is the inability to make sense out of what you hear. So you may hear and not understand what it is, even though the person is speaking in a language that you do understand. So auditory processing differs from a language disorder, which would be the inability to understand the meaning of the words. Whereas auditory processing is the ability to take in and get to the brain what it is we hear so that we can make sense out of it.
Okay. So if a parent says, hey, my son hears just fine, he can hear the music, he can hear when I snap, he doesn't have APD, you're saying that may not in fact be the case?
Yes, that may not in fact be the case.
How does auditory processing disorder affect learning and affect a student's behavior and functioning?
Many times children will misinterpret directions because they may have trouble following multi-step directions, holding it in their working memory. They also may answer questions incorrectly because they misheard what was being said. So they may miss certain sounds. So if the teacher is talking about chairs from different centuries, the person may have heard hair and answer the question inappropriately, and you know, it's not that they're not paying attention, it's just they did not hear properly what was being said.
I'll give you an example that will help people understand this. It's a real example, okay? And I had the observation of this with a child, okay? We were talking about grammar. So basically, what we're saying is that, do you have a problem, or is there a problem with grammar? And the child's response was, what's wrong with my grammar? What problem does she have? So he heard what I said, but he processed the grammar as grandma and totally changed the meaning of the whole thing.
So I think maybe some people's reaction would be if I just say what I need to say louder, or the person just, if I increase the incentives, maybe if I add consequences, the person's going to start hearing and understanding better. Is that a good course of action to take?
No, because actually one aspect of auditory processing disorder is many children have sensitivity to sound. So speaking louder makes my system shut down. So actually I get less than when you're speaking normally to me. And Loraine has often brought up some good examples of this.
You know, tone of voice is very important to people with auditory processing disorder because you know we're missing some of the words. So you can shout at somebody that they're doing a great job, but the person with APD is going to take it, what did I do wrong? Why am I being yelled at? And miss that they're actually being complimented. You know, when my son was growing up, I had to be very careful with tone of voice because he has auditory processing disorder, and never to yell, because as soon as I would yell, he didn't process anything that was being said. And if the tone, I could have been telling him, you did a really great job today, all he heard was that loud tone, and that it was different from my normal tone, and he thought he did something wrong.
So it's not that the person's being willfully not paying attention. It sounds very frustrating for that person as well. What's that like for a person with auditory processing disorder to try but have a hard time understanding things?
It really affects your self-esteem. You know, you're afraid to raise your hand in class after a while because you may be answering questions off key, and you know, you get tired of being laughed at in class. So I also have auditory processing disorder, but I didn't know it when I was in school. I just found that I got laughed at less when I went up and spoke to the teacher after class than when I raised my hand during class. And one of the things I wanted to do with the children's book, I Get It, many times children don't understand what it is that they have. They just know that they're struggling. But they need to understand why they're struggling, because it affects their self-esteem. So I want the children to be able to understand what they were experiencing and that they can be successful. And that's what I Get It is about. It's explaining to children. It's also a great way for teachers to learn about auditory processing disorder because it's not overwhelming for the teacher. It's a children's book. It's not threatening like an article is. So they learn, and there's ways to help the child both at home and at school in the back. And then, teens get older. They need to get through high school and learn how to drive and just simple everyday activities. And it's hard when you have a learning disability. So the last book that just came out this week is to help with just practical solutions on getting through your environment at home, because sometimes family members can get very frustrated with somebody that has a learning disability. Ways to survive in school, how to apply for colleges, and get your accommodations in college. It also goes over different treatments. A lot of the treatments out there, unfortunately, have not been tested on an auditory processing population. So while they say that they're treating it, how can you officially treat it if there's no research on it that shows it'll help? So I do get into some of the treatments and show that yes, they're claiming this and this, but their population consisted of 30 people when they tested it, or their population was all autistic and not APD, officially diagnosed. So I just want parents to be aware when they're looking into treatments to look at the research behind it.
Yeah, it's great to have someone with the expertise be able to review the available resources, and for people who are new to it and just discovering APD, there's a lot out there. There could be a lot out there, and they may not know what could be really evidence-based and effective. And your book helps point them in the right directions.
Also, our first book, which is Don't You Get It? Living with Auditory Learning Disabilities, also helps people, professionals as well as parents, understand what auditory processing is like. But what's nice in this book also is that there's a couple of chapters written by children, they were teenagers at the time, or older, who had lived with auditory processing, even adults, and who explain in the book what it was like living with it, so that if I have a problem and I don't understand, but I can see another child having the same problem, another teen, or even another adult, as a parent I can better understand there are ways that you can overcome this. And there are things about, and I apologize to use this, but it's in the book, that all of the people wrote their chapters independently, but they all identified the same thing, that they felt dumb. They did not feel smart. And yet, of the people who wrote this, okay, 2 of them have doctorates. Okay, so we're definitely smart people.
It sounds very empowering for someone, and lets people know that there's a lot of hope and they can work with APD.
Yes.
Yeah. So how does APD typically get recognized? A person might be struggling with school or having some difficulties with behavior at home. How does it go from that to knowing that a person has APD?
The first thing that a teacher or a parent may recognize in their child is the child either not getting, that's why we call it, don't you get it, not getting what you said, or misinterpreting it, such as grammar versus grammar, as an example. So if you are talking with the child as the teacher or as the parent, okay, and you notice that the child's responses are off of what you asked, then you think it through and say, if that child misinterpreted grammar as grandma, that would be an appropriate response. So the child's response is appropriate, but their interpretation is incorrect. Many children with auditory processing problems only get part, and it's not a memory problem specifically that I can't remember, is how can you remember what you didn't get? And so therefore, the child may go to their room, get their coat, but they did not close the light that they were asked to do, or they did not get their hat because it's cold to go with their coat, so they get part of it. And very often parents will see this. One thing parents can often do when they question, could it be that my child's not paying attention, or could it be that my child doesn't get it, is play a little game with the child and ask the child to repeat. Because if you have an auditory processing problem, you will repeat what you processed, which is incorrect. Okay, so it's not you weren't paying attention, you didn't get it. And that's one way to say, I wonder if this could be an auditory processing problem. Maybe it's worthwhile to go for further testing.
Okay. So some signs are maybe some obvious mishearing of information, some difficulty remembering it, and then not being able to repeat back when someone gives you a prompt. And at that point, you might seek some further assessment. And what would be a good place to go to seek further assessment at that point?
Only by licensed audiologist can make the diagnosis.
Okay.
So mistakenly, a lot of neuropsychologists and psychologists feel that the test that they use, because it has the words auditory or processing in it, that they can make that diagnosis, but it's much more involved than that, and by license only an audiologist can make that diagnosis. And most of the tests that we use as psychologists have not even been warned with an auditory processing disorder population. So that there's multiple difficulties. What comes in handy as a school psychologist and a clinical psychologist is our ability to do really qualitative observations. You know, is the child in the classroom being distracted because they can't block out the ticking of the clock or the fan from the smart board or things like that? And if they were in a quiet room, they could pay attention, whereas the child with attention deficit disorder is still going to have problems with paying attention. So a lot of the symptoms overlap. So we really have to do qualitative observations, and also when you're doing the testing, is the child saying or what after every question? Do you need to repeat the questions a lot? Are the questions are the answers off base from the question, not because the child doesn't have intellectual ability to answer it, but because they're misinterpreting the question being asked. So there's a lot of qualitative information that we get that we can then decide, okay, we need to have an audiologist involved to take it to the next step.
To pick up on what Loraine was saying, is that the testing, there's a battery of standardized tests that were standardized on children with known not auditory processing problems for your norms, and then evaluated against children with no auditory processing problems to validate the norms. The focus is to give the child a battery of tests, not one test or one screen, and make sure that you're looking into many different areas of auditory processing. For example, in the new book, the survival book, it talks about specifically the different areas of auditory processing using two different approaches, which some audiologists will use. One is called the Buffalo model, developed at the State University of New York, Buffalo, by Dr. Jack Katz. And the other is my model, which is called a multi-system, multiple way of looking at auditory processing model. What's important is to find an audiologist who uses an appropriate model, not just, here's a test, he fails, problem. Here's a test, he passes, no problem. But this is why he's failing. And what do we do to accommodate? For example, some children with auditory processing problems cannot process rapidly. So how do you accommodate? Slow down. But what's important is there's treatment, and there's evidence-based research done on people with auditory processing problems to show that this treatment is successful. So we want to not just find pass or fail, they did or do not have a problem, but what is the specific areas of auditory processing that the problem is, and then how do we treat that specific area? How do we treat the problem?
I think it's also important to note that not all audiologists are trained in doing this type of assessment, and the ones that tend to do just one test and say are not really fully versed in auditory processing disorder, and that wherever you go, you should be getting a full report with not only the results but also different interventions and ways to accommodate for it. A lot of places do testing and the parent gets a one-page report, and that's just inadequate. It doesn't give you enough information to really help the child afterwards.
Right. So this book gives parents a lot of ammunition about knowing what to look for. We really need a team approach when we're doing an assessment for APD. We need to work with a qualified audiologist who's familiar with some theoretical models of APD. And then we need to be sure that we're getting a report that gives a lot of pointed interventions and accommodations for that person. So what are some of the ways, you mentioned before that people with APD can have many successful careers and have fulfilling lives, and you already started touching on this. What are some of the accommodations and treatments and things that are done for people with APD and families? One of the nice things about the book is that it brings together families, the treatment team, and the team themselves with APD to work together. What are some of the ways that they can work together? What are some of those interventions?
Well, it depends on the child's specific type or area of auditory processing. As I said before, if speed of processing is a problem, slow down. That's an accommodation. Okay. Another thing also is noise. As Loraine was talking about, have the child be in a quiet environment, especially for studying, for doing schoolwork, for doing their homework, for working at doing exams, tests, and things like that. Some children are slow at processing, not just the income, but I got it, I understand it, and here's my response. They need extra time. And so we want to give them extra time, extended time. There's another accommodation. Okay, some children, because they can't focus well and there's too much noise, they can benefit from something called an FM system, which is an accommodation, not a treatment. It's like if you broke your leg, you might use a cane or a crutch. It doesn't teach you to walk. It doesn't make you walk or run, but it accommodates until your leg is healed. So the FM system accommodates the child so that the child's getting just the teacher's voice, doesn't have to worry about any of the other noise, and it's nice and clear and be as loud as you adjust the volume. Okay, another accommodation is to use clear, concrete visuals. So I'll just give you an example also. We're going to take a lesson, and it's about Christopher Columbus, and we're going to be talking about Christopher Columbus, we're going to be talking about Queen Isabella, and we're going to be talking about the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. And the child listening says, oh, who are those 5 people? Whereas I think we'd all know the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria are not people. But a picture of Christopher Columbus and maybe Queen Isabella with a picture of the 3 boats or the 3 ships would help me say, oh, those are the people, and those are the names of the ships.
Also, nowadays teachers tend to walk around, they don't sit at the front desk anymore, so when the teacher is at the opposite end of the classroom, the child is likely to miss a lot of that instructional information. So it's important to make eye contact with the child, make sure that they're looking at you, and that so they can focus more on the instructions. Be aware of the different sounds around it. Like in my living room, we used to have a clock that ticked. My son could not concentrate on his homework. We had to change it to an LED clock. Most people don't hear those sounds that somebody with APD that's sensitive to sounds will hear and pick up. So somebody that's flipping the pen in the back of the classroom or cracking gum, that's someone's all the child hears and does not hear the teacher. So my son had a system worked out with some teachers that if he touched his nose, it meant that somebody was making these background noises and he couldn't focus. So it wasn't like he was tattletaling on anybody, but it alerted the teacher to become more aware of the other sounds that were going on in the classroom.
Yeah. One of the nice things about the book is it practices what you all are preaching here, and the book has wonderful illustrations that really help the team to get engaged with the book, get interested. There's lots of worksheets within there, reproducible worksheets that are downloadable that can be used by the team, the treatment team, the family. These things take practice, right, to get used to and to build into the routine. and it's something that the whole system can be involved with and helping the team to be successful.
And as the person grows, your needs change. So what worked for you in elementary school might not work for the person in high school because the demands are very different. So, in elementary school, you're not changing classrooms for every subject. In high school, you are. You have to figure out timing and being able to get to your locker, being able to hear instructions as everybody's packing up at the end of every period, and when homework is sometimes given. So just having the teacher have the homework available on the internet if the school has a website, or writing it down on the board, can you do that? In high school, morning announcements. Kids are talking during morning announcements. Well, if you don't hear that football practice is canceled, you're going to show and be the only one at football practice. So having a buddy system, next to you in the classroom, that, if they know that you go to football practice and football practice has been canceled, that buddy will let you know in case you missed that announcement. So there's just different practical ways to get around it.
If I may also add then, those are all accommodations, but there are treatments. Okay, using an example is the noise sensitivity, listening to noise, being bothered. One thing that happens is that the brain, just to survive, shuts down. And one unit of research has been doing on something called listening therapies. And these listening therapies actually help calm the brain. And therefore the brain doesn't shut down, and it becomes more able to tolerate some of the background noises. And then what you can do is train the child how to listen with the background noise once the emotional reaction has been desensitized. If the child has a speed, as we talked about speed of processing, there's training that works on speed of processing. It actually works on integrating what I hear with some action, but I have to keep a rhythm to what I'm hearing. And I would say in the last 10 years, definitely, there's been a lot of research on the relationship between music. So like the listening therapies use music, and the other one that I'm talking about uses a rhythm, which is music. And that music that's specifically made for calming the system helps that. Music that's specifically made with a certain rhythm and making you do something to that rhythm helps you learn to listen and react to it. There's also, what we often wonder about, is reading problems that can be due to underlying auditory, we call phonological or phonemic listening problems. So I don't hear all the sounds clearly, like the grandma, and that example that I use with grammar and grandma. And so the thing is that you need to have someone who can help the child work on discriminating the sounds they hear. And then how do they take the sounds and blend them together to make a word? And how do they relate the sounds they hear to the symbols that we read? It's called sound symbol association, which will then improve my ability to read. And then there's also something called integration, taking pieces to put it together to form the whole. With the sound system, the phonological would be like, what word is cat? What word is, I use, don't you get it, okay? Do, etc. But then with language, okay, we could have, okay, go upstairs, get your book. What are you going to do? I'm going to go upstairs and get my book. And we do it by breaking it down, teaching the child how to put it together, as well as give the child the whole thing and see if the child can break it down. Such as, what I would like you to do right now is get up and go to the door and knock on the door. What did I say to you? What are the important things I said? Go to the door and knock. That's all I said. So there's training that you can get, and there's specific programs to help children with auditory processing problems.
Fantastic. So there's different accommodations, interventions. One thing I like, this book really helps walk people through the whole process, from the beginnings of noticing some issues that further investigations, things to look for, ways that you should then follow up and get further assessment through interventions. And it covers the whole lifespan. It can be really modular to fit wherever someone's at in the process and in their life. So for a family that's just struggling to know what to do, through looking to enhance the treatment they're getting, the book is a really nice accompaniment.
Just simple things that family members can do is instead of shouting from one room to 2 rooms away, you'll get much more compliance from the person with APD is if you're standing next to them, giving them the same instructions instead of shouting 2 rooms away and getting frustrated that they missed half of it or didn't do it correctly.
Yeah, so all this information and more is contained in the book. Again, the book is Survive and Thrive with Auditory Learning Disabilities. It's available through Stoelting. There's a number of other APD products as well, books that you all have written that we discussed today. So take a look, get more information. We're always available to answer additional questions, and we're glad to be able to offer this resource to help people with APD. So thanks for coming today, and it's been great talking with you about APD. Anything in closing that would be good to note?
It's so important for children to understand and teens to understand what it is that they have and that they can be successful. There's a chapter in the book with real life people that have careers from being psychologists to working in the extermination field to being detectives. Because I wanted them to understand that there's no limit to what you can do and be when you grow up. You just need to know how to make accommodations so that you can work to your potential.
And one thing I'd add is, and please remember, there's treatment. Once we know what the specific problem is, there's treatment so that you can learn to overcome the problem and it doesn't interfere with your life. And so that's very important.
Well, again, thanks so much for coming, and we're glad to be able to offer this information to people. Thank you.